Kalorama, a Recorded Books Highbridge imprint, presents The Quintessential Good Samaritan, the Authorized Biography of John Joseph Kelly, Champion of Social Justice, by Thomas Huening. Foreword by Congresswoman Jackie Speer. Read by Mike Chamberlain. Foreword. John Kelly was a saint, an irreverent saint who refused to play by rules that made no sense and prevented him from offering shelter, food, and health care for those in pain. He was never politically correct, but always correct in his politics. I admired him more than words can communicate. I always felt like I was in the presence of a holy man who pushed the limits of human goodness. As these thoughts are being written, the world is in the grips of a mighty pandemic. I wonder what John would say if he were here today. I have an inkling. While the captains of industry shake and ask for government assistance, John would ask for help for the poor. While the powerful delay questions of state due to partisan differences, John would counsel us to first pay attention to the welfare of children, and then to rest assured that all else would be resolved accordingly. I read an article recently that asked if politicians lie all the time or just some of the time. It was a disheartening question, but not an uncommon sentiment in our times. John was quite different. He inspired politicians to be better than they thought they could be, and when that didn't work, he embarrassed them to the same end. Woe be to any one of authority who failed to look John in the eye, or who stumbled in their commitments to those with no means, for, assuredly, they would know their own weakness from John's calm judgment. Samaritan House was and remains John's gift of generous spirit to one of the most dynamic communities on the planet. If we truly believe in equal opportunity, then John's great masterpiece and his enduring legacy will be that this gift teaches the community how to turn the ideal of equal opportunity into reality each day. It's an important lesson for a community that might otherwise slip into soulless self-absorption born of historic wealth. Thank you, John, for your spirit and the institution that it built. Our community may survive on water from the Sierra Nevada mountain range, but we thirst for the humanity and humility that you bequeathed as your example. U.S. Congresswoman Jackie Speer, Democrat, California. Introduction. One warm August day in 1979, 51-year-old Father John Joseph Kelly ended his formal Mass at St. Mark's Catholic Church in Belmont, California, turned to the crowd, and in his booming baritone voice wished all the ritual peace of the Lord. The congregants in this makeshift parish south of San Francisco dutifully echoed their expected response, and also with you. Kelly then softly asked people to shake hands as the traditional sign of peace. He paused a long while, gazing at the packed audience, ready to take a life-changing step into an uncertain future, one he could have never believed possible years earlier. Slowly, Kelly reached to the hem of his vestment, pulled it up over his head, and held the gold-trimmed white silk cloth just a moment before dropping it in a clump at his feet. He straightened to his full 6'2" height and looked to the parishioners as if 100 pounds had been lifted from his shoulders. He saw several parishioners fighting back tears, each shocked that after 25 years as a priest, Kelly was renouncing his days as a devout man of the cloth. Now, dressed simply in a sports shirt and trousers, he was just one of them, no longer their spiritual guide to the Jesus Christ he worshipped on a daily basis. To mark the occasion, one of joy for him, he softly began to sing the song Born Free, and the congregation immediately joined in. When the singing ceased, many parishioners rushed to Kelly and for several minutes they hugged him with love in their hearts. Some others turned and left in disapproval. For months, Kelly had wrestled with his conscience, hoping he could fulfill his vocation and continue the Catholic life he had chosen so long ago. But after witnessing the shortcomings of modern religion, and after a long and painful struggle, he discovered he could not budge the Catholic bureaucracy to accept his form of social action. Finally, the conflict of emotions had led him to this day of decision, to leaving his mother church behind in this disobedient, shocking, yet personally satisfying final act. To be certain, Kelly had become a fallen-away former Roman Catholic priest. He hadn't quit to be married or been defrocked because of a scandal. Rather, his advocacy for social justice for the poor and oppressed exceeded and transcended that of his church. He felt his commitment had been co-opted by the organizational, bureaucratic model that plagues many organizations that have grown too large. Kelly would never say it, but he had become holier than his church by simply following the example of how Jesus lived his life. His inspiration led to a life of true inclusion and caring for everyone in need, with no exceptions, examples that had been part of the early organizational church. Kelly didn't fall away from his belief in Jesus. He leapt away from a distorted image of Jesus with clear purpose and passion for compassion that he couldn't find in his church. In the days and weeks ahead, there would be no miracles or lightning bolts of instant enlightenment. Kelly struggled with each life choice like other mortals. First, he focused only on survival, without a plan to be or do good. Fortunately, others saw his potential and helped animate him into a life dedicated to social justice. He soon recognized all the human needs around him and set about fulfilling those needs as his job and his life's work. Fulfilling these human needs led Kelly to become not unlike Jesus, St. Francis of Assisi, Mother Teresa, and Mahatma Gandhi. During a life dedicated to others who had lost their way and needed his love, he would be instrumental in helping feed thousands of people who were hungry, providing them shelter, and making certain they had adequate clothing. Then, when these tasks were completed, he would become a true saint to lost, imprisoned souls through his tireless efforts in the area of restorative justice at San Quentin prison and the county jail near his home. Without question, John Kelly was an unglorified hero, a role model, and a champion for social justice for anyone who truly desires to make a difference in today's confusing world. From his very lips to my ears, and from those who knew him best, this is his remarkable story. Tom Huening. Priest and Teacher. In 1953, there were two ways for an Irish Catholic boy to impress his parents: become a priest or attend Notre Dame. Phil Donahue. 1. Growing up in San Francisco. John Kelly was not born a saint, and by age 3, beleaguered by his older brother Ray, he often cried, whined, and screeched. In March 1932, his mother Ellie, bringing home baby number 3, gave up trying to control his tantrums and decided to send him away. 4-year-old John cried and shrieked as he headed away to his exile. Told to be happy and proud of his new baby brother, he instead felt rejected, sad, and lonely. He was delivered to godmother Nora Kine from San Francisco across the bay to the city of Oakland to ease Ellie's added burden of new son number 3. He didn't realize that he caused his mother's distress, that he brought on his own banishment, that the move was temporary, or that he'd soon be allowed back home. Mother Ellie, 5'6", slender and nice-looking, with a head for numbers, felt increasingly trapped and burdened by motherhood, and seeing her dream of a business career slip further away. She'd only completed 8th grade, but worked as a bookkeeper for the Magnavox Company. Ellie regretfully had to turn down a head bookkeeper promotion offered when the company division relocated from the Bay Area to the Midwest. She was smart, but her earlier education had been stalled due to her family's failing financial circumstances, which had caused them to immigrate to the U.S. from Norway. With added son Donald, postpartum Ellie felt overwhelmed and defeated in her efforts to control John as she struggled day by day just to get by. Nora, on the other hand, enjoyed her godson's stay and gave him undivided attention. After 3 months, his mother said she was ready to take on the extra load, and John's godmother returned him home. The time seemed brief to the adults, but to John, 3 months was an eternity. Upon arriving back home, he wondered whether he still belonged to the family, and worried they wouldn't allow him to stay. His mother, occupied with baby Donald and older son Ray, still had little time for John, which amplified his insecurity. He resumed acting like a brat. Meanwhile, his father Raymond was distant and left child-rearing mostly to Ellie. John felt his tall Irish dad didn't know or care what was going on in his troubled family. Shortly after his return home, John needed a thyrotoxic cyst removed, and his overnight hospital stay intensified his feeling of abandonment. By late age 4, he started having nightmares and spooky dreams. He began a new pattern of even angrier screaming tantrums. Ellie, already frustrated with the demands of raising her family, was unsympathetic and demanded that John stop crying. His acting out was a constant disturbance in her life, but she had few solutions as to how to make him behave. Exasperated, she settled on trying to intimidate him in a most unusual and detrimental way. Ellie told him he wasn't a boy at all. He was really a girl. She insisted that since boys wouldn't whine and cry and sulk like he did on a daily basis, he must not really be a boy. Young John was unable to associate his misbehavior with his mother treating him so badly. One day, after whining and throwing yet another tantrum, she grabbed a bucket of water and chased her son down the narrow space alongside their home. He reached the end where he couldn't reach a high gate latch and became trapped. She cornered John and dumped cold water over him, hoping to shock him into better behavior. At her wit's end, she figured that was the only way she could make her wayward son stop acting up. To further punish him, she directed him to go downstairs to the basement while still soaking wet, and she ignored the boy for a long time. When her shock therapy failed, Ellie became even more exasperated with her son's rebellious conduct. She put him in one of her dresses and forced him to walk out in the backyard by himself. Crying all the way, he ranted and raved while walking around humiliated in his mother's dress, not realizing his yelling only caused further unwanted attention. John's antisocial behavior and Ellie's misguided treatment of her son went on for years and caused him to cower in fear and become round-shouldered and tense. Most days, he had trouble figuring out how he was supposed to act or what type of boy he was supposed to be. He developed a poor self-image that affected him for many years. Adding to his already dysfunctional childhood, John's older brother Ray persisted in teasing and tormenting him. Ray picked on his brother and never let John in on anything Ray was doing, causing John to feel insecure and unwanted by both his brother and his mother. John became this skinny little kid with no sense of being anybody. He doubted his worth and whether he even had a place in the Kelly family. The young boy was destined to grow, of course, but graduated from 8th grade weighing only 102 pounds on a 5'2" frame. Adding to his woes was a high, squeaky voice that his brother Ray and others made fun of at school. Economic times were tough. John was born the year before the stock market crash in 1929 that led to the National Depression, lasting throughout his youth. The Great Depression years meant the Kellys weren't always sure what they might eat for dinner. John's father, Raymond, had grown up in Menlo Park, California, and made it just through 9th grade at Bellarmine High School in College Park, San Jose. Once married to Ellie, he traveled throughout California and Nevada, selling mill supplies for Pacific Mills and Mines. He and one other salesman lasted on the job until 1933, when he joined his fellow 25% unemployed Americans as Pacific Mills folded, like so many other Depression-ravaged companies. Raymond then picked up odd jobs digging ditches at Stanford University, setting up tents for shows at San Francisco Civic Auditorium, and selling tickets at nearby Kezar Stadium. Both parents sacrificed for their sons. Ellie baked and sold pies, secured a part-time bookkeeping job at a San Francisco canned goods company, and brought home unsaleable cans with missing labels. When desperate, the boys went down to the basement and shook the cans to guess the contents and decide what to have for dinner. Many were fruit cocktail, some spaghetti, and some dog food, which they didn't eat. Raymond was embarrassed by his loss of regular work. Ellie had seen her Magnavox bookkeeping job and head bookkeeper opportunity slip away. Both troubled by uncertainty and food insecurity, they treaded water and did their best to raise John and his brothers. Dad Raymond was around more than he used to be, but Mother Ellie still ran the show at home. By the mid-1930s, the Kelly family had rented a 3-story San Francisco Victorian, but eventually the homeowner told Raymond the family had to buy or move. John's dad was not working regularly at the time, so panic had set in, but he and Ellie talked the $3,750 asking price down to $3,250. Luckily, they were able to borrow $500 from a friend who had some PG&E stock, make the down payment, buy the house, and somehow scrape up their monthly payments. The roof leaked with buckets catching the drips. On Saturdays, John's dad climbed up on the roof to plug the holes with tar. Things were tough, but not desperate, and the family managed, like many others in their urban, mostly Irish Catholic San Francisco neighborhood. John and his brothers, Ray, Don, and Michael, grew up in the Haight-Ashbury, now called Coal Valley, in San Francisco, a block from Golden Gate Park and Kezar Stadium. Without exception, the boys and their parents attended Sunday Mass. Once the church chore was completed, the youngsters played baseball and roamed the expansive park. Dad Raymond, a sports enthusiast, worked one of his part-time jobs at Kezar Stadium, taking tickets and selling football programs, and often snuck the boys into games. Sometimes on weekends, the family traveled down the San Francisco peninsula to Menlo Park to visit Ellie's parents. John later described his favorite grandmother, Ellie's mother, Amania Jensen Polson, as one of the most beautiful human beings I ever knew, warm and effusive. Ellie's parents were once aristocratic and well-to-do, supported by her father Jens's large brick factory in Denmark. Apparently, his business partner had cheated him, and he lost everything, which triggered the family's move to the United States. Jens, supposedly a talented artist, once showed his art at an exhibition at a Paris fair, according to a family legend. Proud of 2 of Jens's paintings, John displayed them for years on his bedroom wall. Of course, as new immigrants, Jens's family and social life had changed dramatically. No longer a factory owner, he became an hourly wage house painter. Money was tight all around, and Ellie's once wealthy folks were unable to offer financial help to her and her family. John later wondered if his mother's childhood had suffered due to her being the child of formerly wealthy Danish parents who made the European social scene. He questioned whether Ellie received sufficient care and attention due to her parents' earlier busy upper-class lifestyle. Meanwhile, in the United States, the Great Depression ebbed gradually by the late 30s, but it took the World War II build-up effort to finally restore the United States economy, and with it, the Kelly family. Raymond had the opportunity to gain regular good pay as a union asbestos worker, and, incidentally, the Kellys were about to have one fewer mouth to feed. 2. Called to be a Catholic priest. St. Agnes Grammar School nuns in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district had Kelly's vocation number, which meant they thought him a prime prospect for the priesthood. No wonder the nuns believed he had promise. Kelly always helped them at school and served as an altar boy. These nuns took pride in how many of their boy students entered the seminary to study for priesthood. Early on, Kelly became the designated future priest. In spite of the nuns' expectations, Kelly experienced no visions, celestial appearances, or voices from above. Rather, in the 7th grade, a visiting parish priest asked if any boys had thought about becoming a priest. Recruiter priest Butch Leonard, a former World War II Marine Corps chaplain, made the case for entering the priesthood. In the early 1940s, immediately following the Great Depression, 4 kids on Kelly's block entered the seminary. They had all been encouraged by their dads, who counseled that priesthood would mean a secure job, 3 square meals a day, and a roof over their heads. Father Leonard wasn't pushy, but told them to think about it. He asked if they had watched the priest in church, and if that was something they might be inclined to do. As an altar boy, Kelly had been impressed, and after Father Leonard's talk, he couldn't get the priesthood idea out of his mind. This feeling lasted, and he felt a responsibility to investigate it. So he prayed for guidance from God regarding the possibility of that vocation. Looking for a sign, he often stopped after school at next-door St. Agnes's convent to hear Mexican nuns praying in chapel. In 8th grade, entirely on his own, Kelly took the seminary entrance test and found out he passed, but feared raising expectations, so he did not tell his parents. One of his 8th grade classmates told his younger brother Don, who rushed home and told their parents. Over the years, Kelly's relationship with his mother had turned a complete 180 degrees from her impossible problem child to her hope for the family, and she was pleased at the news. Ellie, in some ways, as noted, expected her boys to make up for her lack of career success. Less and less could she count on or control her oldest son, Ray. So, despite her earlier frustrations and low expectations, the much-matured number 2 Kelly son became her hope. Catholic families in the late 1930s and early 1940s considered it a great honor to have a daughter become a nun, or especially for a son to become a priest. Ellie got wind of the nuns' encouragement and priestly expectations for Kelly, and things changed dramatically at home. Her attitude turned positive towards him, and he became the family ticket to parish prestige. Kelly recognized his chance to be different from his brothers and to surpass problem brother Ray and win Ellie's love and approval. Despite those earlier difficulties and struggles with his domineering mother, he became her good boy, Jackie. Sadly, he won her short-term approval for his new potential priest role, but he would never feel her unconditional love. Top student Kelly graduated at 13 years old and earned himself a scholarship to the highly rated St. Ignatius High School in San Francisco. He turned it down and instead began his long road to the priesthood in September 1942. John felt strong faith evenly mixed with doubts. He wondered if he had truly been chosen by God to be a priest. To slip from the shadow of his older brother to be the success his mother sought, and hopefully to please God, he entered the seminary. Seminary life for young Kelly. As the twig is bent, so grows the tree, and in Kelly's youth, the Catholic Church recruited boys right out of the 8th grade, reasoning they would interest them before they discovered sex. Kelly, for sure, hadn't happened upon sex, but he still harbored misgivings about his vocation. Nevertheless, he committed to beginning the process of becoming a priest in the minor seminary. Once accepted in September 1942, not yet a year after Pearl Harbor, Kelly entered the St. Joseph's College Minor Seminary in Mountain View, California. World War II was not yet going well, and the country's mood was fearful and uncertain. Kelly, along with 55 other pubescent high school freshmen, left home and arrived at St. Joseph's. Like many of his compatriots, he sought a safe harbor in the seminary. St. Joseph's provided 4 years of high school and 2 years of college in a monastic environment. Kelly and fellow seminarians were detached from family except for visits from 1 to 4 p.m. on the 3rd Sunday of every month, during summertime and during the 2-week Christmas vacation. Parents were allowed entry only into the front parlor and on the flat land outside where they would have a picnic. At 4 p.m., the bell rang, parents departed, and the seminarians retreated into their domicile. Other than this visiting time, the boys saw no one from the outside. Ellie wrote once a week, but that Sunday visit was his only contact with Raymond. Furloughed for summer vacation, the seminarians were expected to attend Mass every day. Prior to leaving in June, each was assigned a research topic to present to their class when school began in fall. Also required was 2 or 3 weeks of summer community service, such as acting as a camp counselor at a boys' camp or teaching catechism. One year, Kelly taught catechism at Saints Peter and Paul Parish in San Francisco's North Beach, with, to quote Kelly himself, 300 screaming Italian kids. He also counseled at Pop Phillips's boys' camp in Healdsburg, north of the big city. Once the summer concluded, it was back to class. Kelly appreciated the camaraderie of his 55 St. Joseph's High School freshman classmates, but thought the academics only adequate, with some good and some horrible teachers. He was labeled the Greek geek, since he loved Latin and Greek, subjects his classmates detested. They all used a cheat sheet pony from an earlier class, while he translated from scratch. He once gave a speech on the value of Greek and Latin in the minor seminary. His classmates thought he was strange, but Kelly would teach Latin years later. Seminary classes were Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, and on those days, students could not converse at dinner. Rather, they listened to readings and speeches from a pulpit. Occasionally, a visiting priest created a bit of excitement by sharing dinner with them and allowing them the honor of talking in his presence. Kelly confessed that sometimes, on their own, they called up a priest to come visit so they would have a chance to talk. Students had Thursdays and Sundays off. Each day after breakfast, the youngsters returned to their individual rooms, only to make their beds. Much later, after study hall from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m., followed by night prayers, they were allowed back to their rooms for the great silence. They were not to speak to anyone until breakfast the next morning. The rule was often broken by students talking to each other out of their windows. The common bathroom at the head of each stairway was locked at 10 p.m. each evening. If someone forgot to use the bathroom before lockdown, his tricky recourse was to pee out of the window into the shrubbery below. Dorm rooms were single occupancy, and as the fiercest rule of the seminary, anyone caught in another person's room was automatically expelled. Students were not allowed to socialize anywhere above the first common area floor. School administration provided multiple social activities and helped vent their youthful male energies with sports. When a boy arrived at the seminary, he was picked by the Ramblers, Trojans, or Bears, each multi-sport team captained by a sixth.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?